Pesta and the Ferryman. When the plague came to Norway in the 14th century, it lasted only a few months, but the devastation, well, it affected the people for years, as you might imagine. There had been a long-told story that you would know when disease was coming, for the plague would take the shape of an old woman. She would wear a red skirt, and her face would be so pale, and she would be carrying either a rake or a broom. Now, if she had the rake when you saw her, well, then your village would have had better luck, for when she would rake, a few of the people might slip through and survive. But once Pesta got to work with her broom, not a soul would be left in your village. The ferryman might have prevented Pesta from coming to his country. It was late in the evening, and he thought he would take just one more fare to fill his purse. And there, coming down to the landing, was an old woman. She was carrying a big, heavy-looking bag and some tools over her back, and the ferryman thought, just one more. And he beckoned her into his boat and began to row across. But his heart was struck with misgiving, and he looked at her more closely. It was true she was in a blue skirt, but perhaps that was a disguise. Her face was so pale, and the tools... Was it a rake and a broom? At last he could contain himself no longer. "Are you Pesta?" The old woman nodded. "Oh, please, 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 I beg of you, you have not paid your fare. If you will spare my life, I won't charge you for the boat trip." The old woman sighed and took out from her bag a big book and turned near the end of it, and her long, bony finger trailed down the page, and then... I cannot spare your life. But since you have asked so prettily, I will make your death an easy one. And she touched him on the shoulder, and the ferryman, in fear, rowed to the other side and let her off with her rake and her broom and her bag. As he tied up his boat and headed toward home, his boots seemed to be made of lead and getting heavier and heavier with every step, until at last he got to his door. He could barely open it. He set the bag of coins on the table and tumbled into bed into a deep sleep. And he never saw the light of day again. But Pesta went from village to village. Some she would get out her rake, and a few would escape. Some she passed right over, and some she took her broom and got to work. And none of those souls were ever seen again.